The Discovery and the Strike Admiral Zenth stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath, watching the holographic display that showed their latest discovery. The blue-green world, rotating slowly in the projection, looked remarkably similar to dozens of other conquered planets in the Valdari Empire's expanding territory. What made this one special was not its appearance, but the primitive electromagnetic signals that had led them to it. The Valdari had built their empire on a simple philosophy. Advanced civilizations were competitors to be destroyed, while primitive ones were resources to be harvested. For 3 centuries, they had swept across this arm of the galaxy, crushing any species that might one day challenge their dominance. Their grey-skinned forms and silver eyes had become symbols of inevitable conquest to hundreds of worlds. "Show me the intercepted transmissions again," Zenth commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known defeat. The hologram shifted to display wave patterns and decoded audio samples. Strange music filled the command deck, followed by voices speaking in an alien tongue that their computers had finally learnt to translate. The signals originated from this world approximately 80 years ago, reported his science officer, Krell. They call themselves humans, and they call their planet Earth. The transmissions show a species that has barely developed atomic weapons and primitive chemical rockets. They should pose no threat whatsoever. Zenth nodded approvingly. The Valdari had perfected the art of timing their conquests. Too early, and they wasted resources on species that might never develop. Too late, and they risked facing technological equals. But these humans appeared to be at the perfect stage, advanced enough to be useful workers, primitive enough to be helpless. Their location places them in an excellent strategic position, added Navigator Vex, highlighting star charts on the display. 3 major trade routes converge within 50 light-years of their system. Establishing a fortress world, they would strengthen our grip on this entire sector. The Admiral walked closer to the projection of Earth, studying the continental patterns and cloud formations. In his experience, worlds with this much water usually supported large populations. The humans would provide excellent slave labor for the mining operations and construction projects that fed the Empire's expansion. "How long since their last transmission?" he asked. 73 years, sir." The signals simply stopped. This was not unusual. Many primitive species went through periods of technological regression or destroyed themselves with their own weapons. The Valdari had learned to wait and observe before committing resources to conquest. A dead world was worthless, but a weakened one could be claimed with minimal effort. Long-range sensors detect multiple artificial structures in orbit and on the planetary surface, Krell continued. Heat signatures suggest a population in the hundreds of millions, possibly billions. Whatever caused their communications to cease, they clearly survived as a species. Zenth smiled, revealing teeth that had been surgically sharpened according to Valdari military tradition. A large population meant more workers for the Empire's projects. The fact that they had stopped broadcasting might even work in the Valdari's favor. It suggested internal conflicts or technological failures that would make conquest easier. "Prepare the 3rd Assault Fleet," he ordered. "We will demonstrate the futility of resistance with orbital bombardment, then land ground forces to secure the surviving population. I want this world claimed and productive within 2 standard months." The command deck erupted into efficient activity as officers transmitted orders throughout the massive fleet. 67 warships began adjusting their courses toward the blue-green world that would soon become another jewel in the Valdari crown. Each vessel carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust, while their holds contained the equipment needed to establish mining operations and processing facilities. 3 weeks later, the Valdari fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Earth system. Long-range scans immediately confirmed the presence of artificial structures, space stations, satellite networks, and what appeared to be defensive installations scattered throughout the outer planets. But the readings were confusing. "Sir, these structures are far more advanced than the primitive technology suggested by their old transmissions," Krell reported, his silver eyes reflecting concern. "Some of these installations show energy signatures that rival our own." Zenth frowned but dismissed the worry. 80 years is sufficient time for rapid technological advancement in a desperate species. It changes nothing. They cannot have developed anything capable of threatening a Valdari fleet. The human space stations made no aggressive moves as the alien ships approached. No challenges were broadcast, no weapons powered up. A few small ships detached from orbital platforms and accelerated away from Earth, but they were too few and too small to represent any real threat. "They flee like prey animals," observed Tactical Officer Rex with satisfaction. "Should we pursue the escapees?" "Let them run," Zenth replied. "A few survivors spreading tales of Valdari power will serve our interests well." Begin bombardment. Procedures. Target all major population centers and industrial complexes. The attack began with mathematical precision. Particle beams lanced down from orbit, turning cities into glass craters in seconds. Fusion warheads followed, ensuring that no significant infrastructure remained intact. The bombardment continued for 18 hours, methodically destroying everything that might represent human civilization. When the weapons finally fell silent, Earth's surface was scarred with thousands of impact sites. The blue-green jewel now wore a crown of fire and ash. Atmospheric readings showed massive dust clouds that would take years to settle, while radiation levels spiked across entire continents. "Life sign readings, sir?" Zenth inquired. "Minimal surface activity detected," Krell replied after consulting. His instruments estimated survival rate less than 2% of original population. Remaining humans appear to be in underground shelters or remote locations. Standard pacification procedures should secure the survivors within days. The Admiral nodded in satisfaction. Another world claimed, another species broken. The pattern had repeated itself hundreds of times across the galaxy, and it never failed to bring him a sense of accomplished duty. Deploy ground forces to secure industrial sites suitable for reconstruction. Begin mineral surveys of the most promising continents. I want resource extraction operations running within the month. As Valdari troop transports descended toward the burning world, Zenth was already planning how to integrate Earth's resources into the Empire's infrastructure. The strategic location would make an excellent forward base for further expansion, while the surviving humans could be processed and assigned to work details throughout Valdari space, but in the deepest bunkers beneath Earth's wounded surface, and in the hidden bases scattered throughout the outer planets, something else was happening. Humans who had spent decades preparing for this exact scenario were emerging from their shelters. They had watched their world burn, counted their losses, and now they were beginning to plan their response. The Valdari had made their first and greatest mistake. They had assumed that silence meant weakness, and that survival meant surrender. They would soon learn that humans had spent those 73 years of radio silence not in technological regression, but in preparation for threats they had never imagined. Commander Alina Reeves pressed her palm against the blast door controls. and felt the massive barriers that had protected Bunker Complex 7 finally unsealing. The facility had been her home for the past 18 months, ever since the long-range sensors had detected the approaching alien fleet. Now, as she stepped into the decontamination chamber, she carried with her the hopes and fury of 30,000 survivors. The Valdari believed they had conquered Earth. They were about to discover what humans could accomplish when they had nothing left to lose. The awakening and first response in years had passed since the Valdari bombardment turned Earth's surface into a wasteland of ash and radioactive glass. In the hidden facilities carved deep into bedrock and hollowed out from asteroids throughout the solar system, humanity had not merely survived. It had transformed itself into something the galaxy had never seen before. Commander Alina Reeves stood in the main operations center of Armstrong Base, humanity's largest surviving facility, built into the far side of Earth's moon. Around her, hundreds of technicians worked at stations that would have been impossible to imagine before the attack. Valdari technology, scavenged from crashed ships and captured installations, had been reverse-engineered and improved upon with distinctly human innovation. Status report from all sectors, Alina commanded, her voice carrying the authority earned through a decade of leading humanity's survivors. At 45, she had been an aerospace engineer before the invasion. Now she commanded the largest military force Earth had ever assembled. Earth's surface installations report full operational capacity, replied Major Chenway from the tactical station. Underground cities in North America, Asia, and Australia are producing war materials at 150% of projected capacity. The fusion reactors are running smoothly, and mineral extraction from the old impact sites has exceeded all expectations. Alina nodded. The Valdari bombardment had done more than destroy human civilization. It had exposed vast mineral deposits and rare earth elements that would have taken centuries to mine conventionally. Humanity had literally built its resurrection from the ashes of its destruction. Outer system bases. Mars colony reports 12 new warships completed this month, answered Captain Sarah Torres from the communications array. The asteroid belt. Mining stations have delivered another 40 million tons of processed materials. Jupiter's moons are ahead of schedule on antimatter production. The numbers would have been impossible before the attack. Humanity had always possessed the technical knowledge and industrial capacity, but it had lacked the unified purpose that came with facing extinction. The Valdari had inadvertently created something far more dangerous than the scattered, peaceful civilization they had tried to destroy. And our guest? Alina asked with a cold smile. Sub-Commander Yex remains cooperative, reported Dr. James Harrison from the Research Division. The Valdari officer had been captured 6 months earlier during a failed raid on one of their mining operations. What he had told them under interrogation had confirmed humanity's darkest suspicions about their enemies. Alina activated the main display, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red markers indicated known Valdari positions, while blue showed human installations. To any casual observer, humanity appeared hopelessly outnumbered. The Valdari controlled 17 star systems in this sector alone, with thousands of ships and billions of citizens. But the display didn't show everything. It couldn't reveal the hatred that burned in every human heart, or the desperate ingenuity that had turned survivors into the most motivated fighting force in galactic history. It certainly couldn't show the technological advantages that 10 years of focused development had created. Begin Operation Prometheus, Alina commanded. Across human space, carefully coordinated plans began to unfold. Ships that had been disguised as debris or hidden in asteroid fields powered up their engines. Weapons that had been built in secret facilities charged their exotic energy matrices. Communication networks that the Valdari had never detected came alive with encrypted signals. Admiral Zenth was reviewing mining reports in his quarters aboard the Sovereign's Wrath when the first attacks began. The ship's alert klaxons woke him from sleep as his senior officers' voices crackled over the communication system. "Sir, we're receiving emergency signals from Mining Station Theta 7, reported his Night Watch commander. They claim to be under attack, but our sensors show no hostile ships in their sector." Zenth hurried to the command deck, still fastening his uniform as he tried to make sense of the situation. The main display showed Mining Station Theta 7, a massive facility built to process rare minerals from captured asteroids. Even as he watched, sections of the station erupted in brilliant explosions. "Where are the attackers?" he demanded. "Sir, we cannot detect any enemy vessels," his sensor operator replied, confusion evident in his voice. "Long-range scans show nothing but the normal debris field around the mining operation." Then, for just a moment, something appeared on the sensors. A ship unlike anything in Valdari records, sleek where Valdari vessels were angular. Organic curves replacing harsh geometric lines. It fired weapons that cut through military-grade armor like it was thin plastic, then vanished again before return fire could be targeted. "Impossible," Zenth whispered. "No known species possesses that level of stealth technology." More reports flooded in from across the system. Mining Station Alpha 4 had gone silent after reporting impossible attacks by invisible enemies. Transport Convoy Delta was being systematically destroyed by ships that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Even the heavily defended supply depot on Kepler 7 was reporting casualties from weapons that seemed to strike from empty space. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies," the communications officer announced. "It's coming from everywhere." The main screen flickered and resolved into an image that made every Valdari on the bridge freeze in shock. A human face appeared, older and harder than the primitive beings they had crushed a decade earlier, but unmistakably human. "I am Commander Alina Reeves of the Human Defense Force," the woman said, her voice carrying a chill that seemed to drop the temperature in the command center. 10 years ago, you murdered 12 billion of my people and reduced our world to ash. You declared humanity extinct. You celebrated our destruction." Elena's image was replaced by footage from the original bombardment, cities burning, continents scarred, the systematic destruction of everything humans had built over millennia. "You made one critical mistake," Elena continued as the horrific images played. "You assumed that silence meant death. You thought that survival meant surrender. You believed that because we stopped sending radio signals into space, we had stopped listening to yours." The display switched to show recordings of Valdari communications, tactical discussions, resource allocation meetings, casual conversations between officers discussing the disposal of human survivors, like unwanted cargo. "We heard everything. We learned your language, studied your technology, mapped your territories. For 10 years, we have prepared for this moment. Now you will learn what humanity becomes when you try to erase us from existence." Explosions bloomed across the tactical display as human forces revealed themselves throughout Valdari space. Ships that had been hidden for years emerged from asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as space debris powered up and began targeting Valdari installations. "This is impossible," Zenth repeated. but his voice lacked conviction. The evidence was overwhelming. Humanity had not only survived, but had spent a decade preparing for war on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Elena's face reappeared on the screen. You tried to hunt us to extinction. Now we're returning the favor. Every world you've conquered, every species you've enslaved, every life you've destroyed, we remember all of it, and we're coming for you. The transmission ended, leaving the Valdari command deck in stunned silence. Around them, reports continued to flood in as human forces struck targets across 3 star systems simultaneously. The attacks showed a level of coordination and technological sophistication that should have been impossible for any species, let alone one that had been extinct for a decade. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked his tactical officer. Zenth stared at the tactical display, watching red markers disappear as Valdari installations fell to the impossible human attack. For the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "Send word to High Command," he said quietly. "Tell them, ... Tell them the humans are back." In her command center on the moon, Alina Reeves watched. The tactical reports flow in from across human space. Phase 1 of Operation Prometheus was exceeding all projections. Valdari forces were in complete disarray, unable to understand how their extinct enemies had returned with technology that surpassed their own. But this was only the beginning. For 10 years, humanity had prepared for this war. They had built weapons, trained soldiers, and most importantly, they had nursed their hatred into something pure and focused. The Valdari had wanted to erase humanity from the galaxy. Instead, they had created something that would hunt them across every star system until justice was served. The last signal Earth had sent into space before the bombardment had been a children's lullaby. The next signal the galaxy received from humanity would be very different indeed. The hunt had begun.